Further demonstrations about the war in Gaza over the weekend come at a time of tense relations between Israel and Australia. Last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Anthony Albanese of being weak and of abandoning the Jewish community over the federal government's intention to recognise a Palestinian state. Amichai Shikli is Israel's Minister for Diaspora Affairs and combating anti-Semitism. I spoke to him in Jerusalem just before the programme went to air. Amichai Shikli, welcome to 7:30.
Hello, Sarah. Shalom.
At least 200,000 Australians demonstrated here over the past couple of weeks. At the same time, 400,000 Israeli citizens were demonstrating in Tel Aviv. Why shouldn't Australians take their cues from the Israelis?
I don't think we are accusing Australians. I see the Australian people as our ally, as our friends. We have warm relationship with the Australian people. And when I'm looking at the pictures that are coming from Sydney's bridge or the demonstration in Melbourne and other places, and I'm seeing the flags of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, alongside the flag of the PLO, I am not sure that these flags actually represent the Australian people. So when I'm looking at this flag, I don't see that and saying, okay, these are the Australian people. No, I'm saying these are the supporters of Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Yes, and among them there are some confused Australians, but that's it happens.
You just referred to warmth in the relationship, but the peak Jewish group in Australia, the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, says that your Prime Minister Netanyahu's attack on Anthony Albanese, calling him weak, saying that he had betrayed Jews here, was to the detriment of the Australian Jewish community. Are you and your Prime Minister making the situation here worse for Australian Jews?
No, I think quite the opposite. I think that first, regarding the Jewish community, there are a variety of leaders in the Jewish community. Some of them are leaning more to the right, some of them are leaning more to the left. Israel is a vibrant democracy, and we do not indoctrinate the leaders of the Jewish community in Australia if they should support the current government in Israel or support the opposition.
But it's not about, if I might just interrupt you, it's not about supporting the government. This was a very specific response to what Prime Minister Netanyahu said, the language, very disparaging language he used about the Prime Minister here. So to come back to my question, are you and the Prime Minister making the situation worse here?
I totally agree with Netanyahu. And I think that the decisions of Albanese's government are extremely weak. To boycott Israeli parliament members, Simcha Rotman now, and before previous Minister of Interior Affairs, Ayelet Shaked, from a different government, or Hillel Fuld, an activist who his brother was murdered by a Palestinian. So there is a policy here to ban Jews who are Zionist Jews and to not allow them to entrance Australia. And on the other hand, you see endless radical Islamists that are entering Australia freely. There is no problem. And you are boycotting the representative of a democracy, elected officials. I think that is very bad policy. And to some extent, when you do it, people can follow and says, okay, if Albanese's government saying that we will not allow Zionist Jews to enter Australia, so we will not allow them to go into our cafes and restaurant, and maybe it's okay to set down a synagogue on fire. Okay.
Well,
and maybe
I'm just going to stop you there. Let me put another
That's
question
the message
to you.
coming from this government.
I think I need to make it very clear that there is no ban on Zionists coming to Australia. But let's talk about you. You're the minister.
That's the reality.
You're the minister for the diaspora. There were specific conditions given for the refusal of those visas. But to talk about you, you're the minister for the diaspora. You have a responsibility to Jews living around the world. Has the Netanyahu government effectively made a decision to end its relationship with its staunch allies, including with Australia?
No, that's not our decision. That's Albanese's decision to award Hamas, to award the barbarism of October 7th, to award the people that were raping our daughters, murdering innocent families, entire families, kidnapping kids with their parents to the tunnels of Gaza. And the current government of Australia decided to award Hamas. And as Hamas leaders are saying, this declaration coming from Macron's government or Albanese's government, these are the fruits, and I'm quoting, these are the fruits of October 7th. So that is the worst policy that you can take if you oppose terrorism, if you oppose Hamas. But if you want to encourage Hamas, so recognize a Palestinian state after October 7. If you want to encourage Hamas, so let every radical Islamist preacher going to Australia and let people take a walk on Sydney's Bridge with ISIS flags and Al-Qaeda flags and LGBT flags that are thinking that they can collaborate with this kind of people.
Let me just come back to what you're. Let me just come back to, if I may,
Gaza with these kind of people.
If I may, just for a moment, what you're saying there.
That is a grave mistake.
What you're saying there is, and first of all, you're quoting Hamas. In every other instance, you reject Hamas as spouting only propaganda. But in this case, you're deciding to take them at face value. But the Albanese government, when it made a decision, a pledge to recognise a Palestinian state at the forthcoming General Assembly at the UN in September, it did so with a clear stipulation that that would only happen if Hamas played no role in a future Palestinian state. So how does it honour, as you put it, rapists and murderers of Hamas when that pledge explicitly rules them out?
Because there is the immediate linkage in between October 7th and the war that is going now in Gaza and the decision. And you cannot detach it and you cannot separate it, no matter what you will say afterwards, by recognizing a Palestinian state when the war is taking place now in Gaza and the war is against Hamas, not against any other group. And you are saying, yes, this is the time, this is the perfect timing to recognize a Palestinian state. Hamas sees it as a victory. And therefore, if Hamas sees it as victory and says these are the fruits of October the 7th, so that is the reality. And you can say, well, but the message is very clear, and that is the only message that counts.
Now,
in a war,
let me be clear, because it is not. It is
in favor of Hamas.
This is your argument that these are the fruits for Hamas. Let me make it clear.
That's Hamas arguments.
The Australian government.
Hamas argument.
I want to pose a different question to you. When the Australian government pledged to recognise a Palestinian state in September, they gave two reasons. One was the threat of annexation of the whole of the West Bank. The other was about the conduct of the war. Now, I want to put this question to you. According to the Israeli government's own figures, between March and May this year, all aid to Gaza was blocked. In June and July, the amount of aid being allowed in was below the amount needed to sustain life. What do you think happens to a child who suffers malnutrition?
Look, I think that when you face malnutrition, it might be very bad. And as you know, Sarah, on October 6th, there was no war. We did not.
But you understand, Amikai Shikli. I'm asking you clearly about what is happening to children in Gaza right now.
This is a war. This is a war that was started by Hamas. This is a war that can end tomorrow morning with Hamas laying down their weapons, releasing the hostages, and there is no war tomorrow. Now, regarding nutrition, starvation, etc., between May to August, 50,000 tons of supply went into Gaza,
which is below the level of aid needed to sustain. Which is below the level of aid needed to sustain life. I'm sorry, I'm quoting the UN.
4,000 calories per person. This is way above the minimum. Now, Hamas, and that is according to UN reports, is intercepting most of the supply, taking the supply selling it in a very high prices to pay the salaries for Hamas militants. That is the vicious circle that is going on in Gaza.
Let me pose this question to you in a different way. If I had Hamas in front of me, I would be asking them questions about their behavior, as we have in the past. Are Hamas and the people of Gaza one and the same thing to you?
No, and I will tell you exactly why. First, in terms of ideology, okay, since the moment Hamas took power in 2007, they have created an entire system. So a Palestinian child in Gaza, when he goes to a kindergarten, it's Hamas kindergarten. When he goes to elementary school, this is Hamas elementary school. When he is going to summer camp or for afternoon activity, this is afternoon activity.
Does that mean that you hold those children responsible?
I'm not saying that they are responsible. I'm just portraying you what is happening in Gaza. How do you indoctrinate a society? By the way, just like the Nazis did to their own society in Germany. So when you have a phone call of a young man, okay, he was entering kibbutz Miflasim, calling his parents and saying, oh, look, father, mother, I just murdered 10 Israelis with my bare hands. It takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to raise a terrorist.
I'm very sorry, we're getting close to airtime. I will have to wrap it up. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah.